Hey everyone, and a huge welcome to all you Genesis International College students. I'm so stoked to be walking you through this explainer on topic 2, which is all about establishing site safety procedures. Now, if you're gearing up to manage construction work, you already know that hitting deadlines and, keeping the budget in check, that's a massive part of the gig. But here's the thing, none of that means a thing if your site isn't safe. This explainer, it's basically your essential survival guide to understanding and running site safety. We're going to break down exactly what you need to know so that absolutely everyone who steps foot on your site goes home safely at the end of the day.
So I was looking at your college's motto, Learn, Grow, Evolve, and it hits the nail on the head here. As future builders, senior managers, and project leaders, mastering these safety procedures isn't just some coursework requirement to just check off a list. It is literally the bedrock of your leadership in this industry. When you walk onto a construction site, you're stepping into this super dynamic environment. There's moving parts everywhere, heavy machinery, and some pretty serious inherent risks. Your ability to evolve into a proactive leader who puts safety above all else, that's what's going to literally save lives. And on the business side, it completely protects your projects from catastrophic delays and legal nightmares.
All right, let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today. We're taking a top-down approach. First up, the WHS legal framework. Then, duty holders and responsibilities. After that, we'll hit the hazard management process, followed by the hierarchy of controls, and finally, we'll wrap up with implementing site safety procedures. Okay, diving right into Section 1, the WHS legal framework, navigating the rules. Before you can even think about enforcing safety on a site, you've got to know the rules of the game, right? Workplace health and safety isn't just like a nice-to-have idea. It is strictly regulated by law. The stakes here are incredibly high, which is exactly why these laws exist at both the Commonwealth level and the state or territory levels. It keeps things balanced and consistent across the board. So to really get this, you need to picture the four-tiered WHS framework. Up at the very top, we have the WHS Act. Think of the Work Health and Safety Act 2011 as your giant umbrella. It sets up the big, broad responsibilities for keeping workers safe. Underneath that, you've got the regulations. These get a bit more granular, laying out the mandatory rules for specific hazards on site. Then we filter down to the codes of practice. These are basically your instruction manuals. They give you the practical, on-the-ground guidance on how to actually meet those act and regulation requirements in your day-to-day work. And finally, the regulators. These are the state and territory agencies that come out, inspect workplaces, enforce the laws, and give advice. Bottom line, everything you do on site absolutely has to fit within this four-tiered structure.
Moving on to Section 2, duty holders and responsibilities. Who is accountable? The law is crystal clear on this. Everyone has a role to play. But the heaviest burden, that falls on some very specific shoulders. And that brings us to a massive acronym you absolutely need to know, PCBU. It stands for a person conducting a business or undertaking. Under WHS legislation, the PCBU is the primary duty holder. Now, for you Genesis International College students stepping into construction management, a lot of you are training to become exactly this. You're the future decision makers, the builders, the site bosses. You are the ones who are going to hold this vital duty of care to protect both workers and the public. It is a massive responsibility, for sure. But honestly, it's also super empowering when you know exactly how to handle it. So, what does a PCBU actually have to do? Well, there are a few specific, entirely non-negotiable responsibilities. First things first, you've got to provide and maintain a safe work environment and safe machinery. Full stop. You also have to ensure that any structures or chemical substances on site are used, handled, and stored safely. But it's not just about the physical work. You're also required to provide adequate facilities for your workers' welfare. The basics. Then, on the education side, you've got to deliver the info, the training, the instruction, and the supervision needed to keep things safe. And lastly, you have to actively monitor the health of your workers and keep an eye on the ongoing conditions of the workplace. If you drop the ball on any of these, you are legally failing your duty. All right, Section 3, the hazard management process, identifying the threats. Now, theory is awesome, but a real-life construction site, it's chaotic. You've got moving parts, massive loads, high-risk work happening all at once. We need a rock-solid system to handle that chaos. And that system is the 4-step hazard management process. Step 1, identify hazards. You literally have to seek out the things or situations, whether in the physical environment, the equipment, or materials, that could potentially cause harm. Step 2, assess risks. So you found a hazard. Now you have to figure out its potential consequences. Step 3, control risks. This is the action phase, where you put measures in place to mitigate or, better yet, completely eliminate the threat. And step 4, review control measures. You don't just set a rule and then walk away, right? You have to continually check if your controls are actually working and tweak them if they're not. As you can see, hazard management isn't just some one-off checklist that you fill out on day 1 and shove in a drawer. It's actually a continuous, proactive loop of improvement. Think about it. The construction environment changes literally every single day. New contractors show up, the weather turns, massive new machinery rolls in. Your hazard management cycle has to constantly spin to anticipate and respond to those changes way before an accident ever happens.
I want to zoom in on step 2 of that cycle for just a second, assessing the risks. Because honestly, this is where a lot of people tend to get tripped up. You have to make a really clear distinction between the severity of a hazard and the likelihood of harm. Severity asks, okay, how bad could this be? It looks at the extent of the potential injury or damage. Are we talking about a tiny paper cut, or are we talking about an entire trench collapsing? Likelihood, on the other hand, asks, what are the actual chances this is going to happen? You might have a hazard that would be catastrophic in severity, but the likelihood is basically 0. Evaluating both of these factors accurately, that's really the only way you can prioritize how you're going to respond.
Let's jump to section 4, the hierarchy of controls, mitigating the risks. When the regulations say you have to manage risks, they don't just leave you guessing. They mandate a very specific hierarchy to figure out your absolute best move. This hierarchy of controls ranks your options from the absolute most effective at the top down to the least effective at the bottom. Elimination is always your number 1 priority. If you can completely remove the hazard, like, say, doing the work on the ground instead of 3 stories up in the air, you just have to do it. But if that's not reasonably practicable, you work your way down the list. You try substituting the hazard or maybe using engineering controls. But here is the biggest thing I want you to take away from this. Look at the bottom of the table. Administrative controls and PPE. Personal protective equipment, your hard hats, your safety glasses, high-vis vests, that is strictly your last line of defense. It is not your first solution. I mean, if a brick falls from 3 stories up, yeah, a hard hat might save a life. But eliminating the chance of that brick falling in the first place, that is what true safety management actually looks like. And finally, Section 5, implementing site safety procedures, putting it into practice. Okay, so how do we take all this legal theory, the risk assessments, the hierarchy, and turn it into physical on-site reality? Well, one of the most powerful tools in your toolkit is going to be the SWMS, the Safe Work Method Statement. This is a mandatory, legally required document for any high-risk construction work. An SWMS spells out in black and white exactly what the high-risk work is, the specific hazards tied to it, and the precise control measures you're going to use to manage those risks. But more importantly, it ensures that your supervisors and your workers all fully understand the required controls before a single tool is even lifted. You see, a truly safe site requires 2 things working perfectly in tandem. You need a vigilant human element, like a supervisor giving thorough safety inductions and actively keeping their eyes peeled for hazards. And you need a rigorous administrative backbone, the safety binders, the SWMS documents, the incident reports. You really can't have one without the other. The documentation proves that you have a solid plan, but it's that continuous human oversight that ensures the plan actually gets followed on the ground. So what does a site manager actually do on a daily basis to keep this safety culture alive? Here are your daily action items. First, use visual cues aggressively. I'm talking bright color codes, labels, highly visible signs to warn workers about hazards before they even walk into them. Second, encourage active worker participation. Keep the safety communication flowing so workers get involved. Look, safety shouldn't feel like a boring lecture. It should be this awesome team effort where workers actually feel empowered to speak up and report hazards. And finally, conduct regular site safety inspections. Actually walking the site enforces your safety messages. It gives you the perfect chance to follow up on health issues and make absolutely sure your control measures haven't been bypassed.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you, the Genesis International College students and the future leaders of this industry, with a pretty provocative question. Think about this. Will your site safety procedures proactively prevent the next hazard, or are they just going to react to it? A reactive manager, well, they fill out an incident report after someone gets hurt. But a proactive leader? They use the WHS framework. They rigorously assess those risks, and they implement the absolute highest possible hazard controls to make sure that accident never even happens in the first place. You've got the tools, you've got the knowledge. Now it's time for you to go out there and build a truly proactive safety culture on your future sites. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, stay safe out there.